Welcome to The State of Us.
Beyond mainstream cable news and party lines, with a millennial and a boomer, The State of Us pushes past the noise and uncovers all the issues that matter.
Here's your host, Justin T. Weller.
Images of amazing vacations, flawless bodies, and beautiful homes that once dominated social media feeds are being replaced with snapshots of real life, with all its laundry piles and stretch marks. What are we talking about today? Well, we're talking about the hazards of being real on social media. That excerpt I just read you is from a piece in the Wall Street Journal about this very topic. It deals with influencers sharing more about anxiety and depression, actually gets teens to do the same. But this might not be all good, and that's what we're looking at today. You can care from a lot of different angles. And that's actually what we're going to talk about here in the first segment of today's show. Basically, everybody from the boomer generation all the way down to Gen Z can care about this. And if you were listening to our intro, which Lance doesn't always do, but if you are listening to our intro, you know that you've got a boomer, Lance, and myself, Justin, a millennial on today's show. So we're coming at it from that perspective. But our producer is a Gen Zer or a Zoomer, as you might like to call them, and his parents are Gen X. So if you're any of those generations, you'll care about this, and we'll explain more in a moment. But of course, we couldn't begin a conversation on the generations and the hazards of social media without
TrueChat senior historian and an educator of more than 30 years. Here is your friendly redneck liberal, Lance Jackson.
No, I think you pretty much covered it, Justin, as far as we have everything for all the groups here. I know that one of the things that when I read this article, I really got into okay, I'm teaching some Gen Zers, and it kind of explains some of the parenting skills of the Gen Xers that I had questions about. So hopefully I can add a little bit on that perspective as well. So let's get into it and see what we can find out to help everybody out all the way through.
Yeah, I mean, if you're, and keep this in mind. So if you're not the direct subject of today's conversation, the reason you still care about this, like, for example, from the millennial perspective, is we're going to spend a good portion of our working lives, probably about half of them, working with Gen Z. So knowing how they came up, how they approach social media, all of that's very relevant. And on the other hand, we also work with Gen Xers who are in front of us. They're the older portion of the workforce right now. And then from the boomer perspective, they're going to have to spend retirement with Gen Xers. So might as well have some insight on how they behave. And if you're like Lance, you might be teaching or engaged in youth activities where you're helping young people. So understanding all of that can be very valuable. So the first thing, Lance, right, is making sure in order from oldest to youngest, we've got boomers, Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z. So boomers, parents of millennials, generally speaking, and Gen X, parents of Gen Z, right? Generally speaking.
That's your definition. That's right. That's the group that we're going to work with today anyway for the
get everybody on the same page to start with. Understanding the way they use social media is real important, Lance, because there actually is a pretty substantial difference. We're talking about millennials and Gen Z here. So the article explains the founder of Front Row Insights and Strategy, which is a consumer insights firm. So this is a group that does research specifically on this sort of stuff. They learned that with millennials, everything on social media was about curation. I'd argue it still is, i.e. showing the perfect life, right? They were raised where it was all about the group and fitting in. Gen Z is being raised by Gen Xers who are fiercely independent. And so it's cool to be different. Gen Z is an inclusive, open-minded generation, and vulnerability is social currency now. So in other words, being vulnerable gets you more credit, right, than kind of fitting in or showing that or being quote unquote perfect. In fact, one might argue that the new being perfect is being imperfect.
It's been interesting to go back and teach this age and see and pick up on these things. And this article, in all honesty, helped me understand some things that I've been dealing with this whole school year, both from the side of these students who are Gen Z and many of their parents who were Gen X. It explains a lot of the, I won't say conflict, but a lot of the situations that I've had to deal with that I was surprised having to deal with. So that being said, you're right. We are an outcome of who raised us. So like most millennials have that perfection because that's what we as boomers strove to show them and said was important. Whereas you mentioned the Gen Xers, who are a lot of the people that I taught who have teenagers now, they grew up with a different set of parents and have a different set of rules now for their own children and their own child rearing practices. Not that one's, I'm not going to judge at all as to what's better or worse or good or bad. It's just, it is a difference. As you pointed out in the pre-show talk, there's a huge difference between the way boomers raised millennials and the way Gen Xers are raising Gen Z.
Why is it dangerous to share these things, right? So we know that, and it's not that there isn't good to it too. I mean, I think that's the important thing here is a lot of good is being done by people being more open about this, okay? Where boomers and maybe millennials aren't as open about that, there's a lot of positive indications for Gen Z sharing these things, more willingness to get help, right? All things that Lance and I have said before, those are good, right? The if you need help seeking it out in whatever form that might be, those are good things. We don't necessarily refute or say that those are bad things. But on the other hand, rarely is anything all good or all bad. And that's what we want to talk about today is this article highlights that. And part of understanding that is this parenting style difference of how we got here. I think, at least in my experience, my friends, knowing my parents, Lance being a boomer, knowing a lot of boomers and knowing a lot of millennials who were raised by boomers, I think that there was very much this idea going back to that quote that we read from before, right? That there was a path. Now, not a super narrow path, but if you go to college, right, if you get good grades in high school, you do the right activities, you go to college or you go to a good trade school, you can have a successful life and you can do these things that define success. Now, how you do that in terms of what career you choose, that was more open. And we know that there was a wide spectrum of what millennials have pursued in terms of career choices, probably broader than any generation prior. So a lot of different ways to go down that path, but there was a more specific path.
I would have argued with you when I was a parent. And I said, no, I wasn't. I was very open-minded and very open to whatever path my children wanted to take and tried to get them to go. But both of them have shared with me as adults that there wasn't any voice that said that. There was just a feeling of an expectation of what was supposed to happen. My voice was saying, hey, this is what you do, what you want to do. You find your happiness, you seek out, you get there any way you want to go. I went to college because that's what I wanted to do. But if what you want to do doesn't require college, you're fine. And both my girls have said, well, yeah, that's true. You said that. But there was always this feeling that there was an expectation that was out there that we were supposed to achieve. Now, I could argue and say, yeah, there was that expectation. You didn't have to do it by going to school, but they are, one has their master's and is now working on a doctorate degree. The other one is working on their master's. And I would have never have thought of myself as someone who said that's what you have to do. But that's the choice they've both taken.
This idea of you need to do at least as well as your parents. So if boomers went down a certain path, even if it's not directly part of their parenting style, you still have that societal influence of, well, if I'm going to do at least as good as my parents did, if they're well educated and they went down this road, then I may not have to do it exactly the same, but I probably have to do something like that if I'm ever going to live up to society's expectation of what I'm going to be.
And that sometimes takes control. I mean, no matter what you say in the household, they come in contact with a whole lot of other people outside the household once they enter the school system. And so then, like you said, it's kind of a resounding message that's sent even above the parental den a little bit.
Right. And then when you look at Gen Z, Gen Z and Gen X, the parents of Gen Z, Gen X, they're not nearly as much that way in terms of, financially, they're not in the same position that boomers are. Many of them are still working, or the oldest ones are just now, thinking about entering retirement. So they're in a different place in life, with their children and with Gen Z. And they're, as is indicated by research, they're more independent minded in the respect that they want to be very independent. And so a lot of that trickles down to their kids of, you do what you want, kind of how you want. You're going to make your own path. In other words, I don't really have an idea of what your path is. I just want you to be safe about your path,
And can I inflect something here? And I want your response to it. My wife and I never have said that we are our daughter's friends. We're their parents. And I think there's and again, I don't want to be a stereotype here, but there's kind of this Gen Z where they want to be their kid's best friend. And we've told our girls, we'll be there for you. We'll help you out. We'll do it. But we're your parents. We shouldn't be your best friend. And it seems like Gen Z, there's a lot of that. I want to be open, but I want to be the best friend of my child. Am I off base? Is that too stereotype? Am I generalizing way too much? Which I'll accept, because I know it's never always and it's never.
Lance has posed an excellent question, and if you want the answer to it, you're going to have to keep it here on The State of Us, and we'll be right back.
We are The State of Us. Here's your host, Justin T. Weller.
Sad fishing, predators, and bullies, the hazards of being real on social media. That's the title of the article from the Wall Street Journal that we're discussing today. If you'd like to read it for yourself at thestateofus.org, as always, it's linked there. Bradley, our producer, Gen Zer that he is, has become relatively adept at using a traditional computer to accomplish some tasks that he's learned, and that's one of them. So he gets that up there for you all to take a look at. That first word you might not have heard of before, sad fishing. And we are
new term.
New term.
Boomer. I don't know that one.
Boomer term alert, right? Don't know what that is.
I know fishing. I know fishing in my creek, but then I know fishing with the PH, but I've never heard of sad fishing.
Yeah, I think this is actually technically, I think the word is incorrect, because I think the way you should think about it is sad and then the PH version of fishing. But the way it's actually spelled, you'll see in the article, is F-I-S-H-I-N-G, sad fishing, as in like the fishing, with a
like
pole.
When you don't catch anything.
Right.
Sad fishing. It's when you go out and you don't catch any. Right.
Okay. Maybe that's how they mean it. But anyway, the question that we left off with, Lance was asking about, is this just a boomer perspective here, or am I off with this idea that parents of Gen Z, so we're talking about Gen Xers, want to be friends with their children? My perspective, Lance, and we're about to hear from a Gen Zer, my perspective is, I'm not sure if I definitely think for some it extends to that best friend type of thing that you were talking about. I'm sure that those situations exist, and I'm sure that's probably where the stereotype comes from. I think more of what I see is, and like I'm thinking about the kids that I was coaching for public speaking, I think it's more of like this, we want to be like on really good terms. You know what I mean? And like, it's like, we want to be real friendly. I don't know if it's friends as much as it is like, we want to get along, like we're equals, I think it's more of that.
Yeah. So where's the discipline come in? You can't be equal.
We're on this level.
I understand. So that's my whole point is how do you discipline as the parental unit if you're on an equal level with your child?
Well, and to that, we'll turn to our Gen Zer, because that's a good question, Lance. You're probably asking the wrong person. I don't know. I'm not sure. Maybe it's that idea if it's an independent thing, right? If independence is what you want for your children, then you're assuming that they're going to make mistakes and they're going to learn from said mistakes. The consequences of their actions are going to teach them the right and the wrong and the good and the bad, and maybe I'm going to be there to help guide that and provide my opinion, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to provide the traditional idea of what we think of as discipline. So, and I say we as the collective we, not necessarily Lance and myself. So Bradley, you are a member of Gen Z. Now, granted, you're not probably your everyday Gen Zer, but you have some stereotypical things. Like you think that Facebook's lame and that Instagram's cool. And those words probably make me lame by saying lame and cool, but whatever. But there's things like that, right? I mean, you use Instagram, you know how to use your phone better than a computer, so on and so forth. Some of these stereotypical things. But on the other hand, there's the less stereotypical things. So everybody knowing that, Bradley, what's your relationship like with your parents? You hear us talking about this parent, child, disciplinarian, student, very kind of black and white, more like a business relationship, I guess is maybe the way to think about how boomers and millennials got it done. There's a boss.
I take offense to that, but I want to hear from Brad.
And there's the employees, and you're the unpaid employees. So if you want to eat in this house and you want to sleep here, there's rules, and these are the rules. What's your experience like?
I don't treat my parents as friends, and my parents don't treat me as their friend either. There's a different level of respect, I think, is a big part of it. A respect that I don't have for my friends.
Maybe you need some new friends then.
Different type of respect.
No, that's good. Bradley, that's why you've turned out as well as you have. I think that's exactly the way it's supposed to be.
Let me I have respect for my friends. It's a different type of respect.
Don't back off of it. You should respect your parents in a different, and that's fine to leave it at that. I hope you didn't say that because I know that your mom listens to every episode.
That's true. We didn't disclose that, did we? I should have mentioned that.
I just did, but I'm
conflict of
interest.
interest.
To hear that. I think that's the key. There has to be. That's what I meant by a different level. There has to be a level of respect.
Yeah.
There has to be. It can't be a friendship. I think Bradley's on to something. I would not take discipline from my friends. I would from a coach or from my parents, but I wouldn't take discipline. I'd take advice from my friends, but I'm not going to let my friends tell me what to do. I'm not going to let my friends say, no, you can't go here. I wouldn't let my friends, for the most part, question me on, do you really think that's the right thing for you to do? I mean, I would on one level,
right?
But there's a higher respect for the answer that my parents would give me than my friends.
Maybe more weight too, right? I mean, maybe it goes beyond just respect. I mean, because there's some people that I respect who it wouldn't matter. I would care, I guess, put it this way, that they didn't like what I was doing. I would care about that, but I'm not sure how much gravity that would have. How much pull would that, the fact, right? I respect them a lot, but they don't like what I'm doing. Is that really going to change things where maybe you have that different weight for a parent or a teacher or a coach, and you also have that respect? So maybe it's twofold. But Bradley, what about, since, it's not, I guess it's not exactly fair to ask you either, because, like, as we know, Mrs. Butch, right, is a listener of this program. So, and I have met her, and I think in my limited experience with Bradley's parents, I would tend to agree with what he just described. I mean, I get that feeling. I don't know if it's true or not, but I get that feeling that there's a good level of respect there, and that it's probably similar to what Bradley was describing. But what about your friends? What do you observe with them? Is anything that this article is pointing out, true of them in a general sense? That do you see your generation being more open about anxiety, depression, and influencers, talking about that and making a bigger deal about it and discussing it?
I think that mental health issues have been more openly and frequently discussed in recent years, But in my experience, social media has never been a place for me to go and express those kind of feelings or emotions. But again, that's just kind of my experience, and I understand that some people find refuge on social media to discuss their feelings if they feel like they have no other way to reach out. But in my experience, again, I've never felt the need to do that. As far as my generation's respect for authority, again, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I would say that we definitely have a tendency to treat authority as more of our equal, opposed to setting more strict boundaries and showing their respect in that kind of way.
They don't necessarily see the separating lines as black and white, maybe as others do.
I think it just all goes back to respect, as I first said.
Less respect for authority figures?
They're giving everyone the same amount of respect.
Okay. Well, see, that's different though, because that doesn't, see, I said less respect, and maybe that's that boomer and millennial, thing there that we've got going on. Maybe it's not, and that's I suppose that's a different way to think about it, right? Lance, is in their minds, it's not, I'm giving less respect to these people. It's that everybody gets the same amount.
Which means you're not giving more respect to somebody who has been through more and who has more. And now I'm talking like a boomer, and I understand that, but you've been through more, you have more life experiences. And so therefore maybe you should give them more respect. No, but I think Bradley did a great job explaining it. Everybody gets the same level of respect.
Above all, I'd like to note, especially because I'm being put in the position of my generation spokesperson.
That's right. You speak for you're the unelected official spokesperson
right.
of Gen Z.
That I generally do not like to generalize whole groups of people. And I know many people from my generation who have great respect for their teachers, coaches, and parents. So I know this kind of goes unsaid, but I just wanted to reiterate that I recognize that everyone is different, and being from a certain generation doesn't automatically define who you are.
Yep. Well, and sometimes it is important to say those unsaid things, especially in today's world. And that's actually,
Lance, that's a Gen Z comment. It's all right to be different. That's what it's all about. It's about being different, and that's what you all want. I mean, that's a stereotype of the definition of Gen Z. So it fits, right? Exactly. That fits exactly. But really, the nuts and bolts of this is, why is this important to getting, or more importantly, why is this dangerous for Gen Zers to be this way? I mean, are there any dangers, or is it all good?
Here's the thing to keep in mind. Okay. Lance and I just did an episode. What was that? I think it was just last week. It was the episode we did with Joe Minerick, Lance. In the third segment, we talked about people making decisions based on anger, right? Or based on sadness or something like that. And we're talking about anxiety again here, right? As one of those things. And we talked about people are vulnerable when they're in this state, right? And we know that. I mean, that's a human thing. They change how you biologically function, at least for a brief period of time. So this whole idea of, if you're more open, right, about your feelings online, okay, because we're going to talk about offline too. But if you're more open online with your feelings, if I tell the world I'm going through this right now, right, and this makes me anxious, or I'm depressed, or I'm worried that I might be depressed, or I'm worried that I might have anxiety problems. This opens you up to people who don't have good intentions in mind, and who are going to use that to try to influence you in a negative way. And we talked about, this is just again, biological thing here. Older people might be a little bit better at avoiding this just because they've had more practice at it, but we are all susceptible, every age. When you're angry, when you're anxious, when you're depressed, you are much more likely to accept things that you would not otherwise accept. And I think that's really important to understand, because that is what opens you up here. If you're sharing this stuff on social media, especially if your account, right, does not have any privacy controls enabled. In other words, anybody can find this, and there's no restriction, whether they're your friend, follower, whatever. There is no restriction. It's public information. There are people and bad actors out there who search for those keywords to find these people, to prey on them, to manipulate them, and to bring them harm, whether that's physically or mentally, both of which are bad. So that's understanding why it can be dangerous. The other thing that's important, we're going to talk about this in a second, is the reality that all of these influencers, it might not be as genuine as it comes off as. And this may not be intentional. We're going to talk about all of that in a second. So to figure out, what do we do about this? Why are influencers talking about this so much more than they used to? To get the answers to those questions and more, keep it here on The State of Us, and we'll be right back.
We are The State of Us. Here's your host, Justin T. Weller.
What teens might not realize, according to the Wall Street Journal piece that we're referencing today, is that influencers' motivation for sharing these feelings isn't always as pure as it might seem. When influencers share personal struggles, it tends to result in more followers, likes, and comments, which results in more brand sponsorships. Influencers see an increase of 7 to 10 times the level of engagement when posting about mental health issues than they do with more mundane posts, according to research. As a result, some are accused of what is known as sad fishing, that term that we mentioned in the last segment of the show, in which people exaggerate their issues for personal gain. That's what sad fishing means, exaggerating your issues for personal gain. So note here, and this is important, doesn't mean they don't have those issues. Okay. We're not saying that people who bring this up are faking or that that these problems aren't real. Because really the only person that can know that is the person doing it, right? I mean, it's really hard to tell somebody you're not feeling that. I mean, that's pretty presumptuous of you to tell somebody else that they don't feel a certain way. So all of that said, it's, we don't want to discredit the good actors out there who are doing good by sharing this. And the reality is good does come of sharing these things. It makes this generation more likely to be willing to talk about it, whether that's with a professional, their family, a trusted friend, whatever. They're more likely to be open about it and not try to bury it down deep, which Lance and I have talked about on the whole is a good thing. This thing that we have to be careful of is because influencers are more likely to do this. And again, this isn't always a conscious thing, right? If I'm an influencer and I'm looking at my statistics and the videos where I talk about my issues get 7 to 10 times the number of engagements, 7 to 10 times. I mean, this is substantial, right? I am much more likely to make content like that. And it might not be devious at all. It's just, oh my gosh, these videos where I talk about my problems, they do way better than all of this other stuff.
But you start to hyperbolize. You start to blow things out of proportion just so you can get more followers.
The highs are high and the lows are lower.
Right. And like you said, that can lead to problems because then that also then throws up flags or signals to people who are predators, who are on these sites to try to find somebody who is in really bad shape because it's easier then to influence them to get them to meet you or to do something that you wouldn't otherwise do.
Exactly. And here's where it translates even further, okay? It's not even just about predators, because maybe you're sitting there thinking, yeah, but the chances of that are low, or maybe I have good privacy settings on my account, so only people that I trust or allow can see my content. But here's the other side of this, okay? Worse yet, as young people tend to emulate the practice of the influencers that they observe, right? And again, this is usually not a conscious thing, okay? People usually don't sit there and think, that person just did that thing, now I'm going to go do that thing. Usually that's not how that works. I mean, sometimes it is, but most of the time it's a subconscious thing. I see these people that I gauge as successful, right? Because they have this big following on social media, which for us is a status symbol, much like for boomers having a really nice car or a big house. Those things were status symbols. Well, now a status symbol is how many people follow you on social media. And that matters just as much as those other things used to matter. So understanding that is now I'm more likely to do these things, to exaggerate my feelings. And then what happens is, we've talked about this before, then you diminish when you really need help, because people are less able to discern when are you just being really dramatic and hyperbolizing, as Lance explained, or when is it really serious, and when do I need to step in, and that's a big problem. It's the boy that cried wolf.
If you say it so many times and people step in to help you, eventually then they become numb to what you're saying, because it's like, are they really reaching out this time? Or is it another one of their stories or feelings or emotions to get more followers? Or are they really reaching out? And then here's my question. Does the person who's doing this even realize that?
In defense of, because you brought up an interesting point there, Lance, and this is one of those people that know me. I think Bradley and Lance would tell you that I'm not necessarily the most forthright about my emotions, especially if they're, the negative ones. In part because of that conditioning and learning that, you do have to have a certain, what do you want to gauge? You don't want to fly off the handle in certain business situations or in a professional meeting, because that can upset other people and that can cost you money and yada, yada. But the thing I guess that I wanted to bring up here is, having been on both sides of that thing that Lance just brought up, this getting professional help, and then being on the other side of not feeling like you have the option of getting professional help, right? Because it's this weird, you might know that you need help, right? And you're looking for help, but you might not be in a position to get the help. Because
is it because of the stigma, or is it because you don't think you can literally do it, get the help? Or is it the stigma attached?
I think it can be both. I think it can be both. You think
society
right?
still has that stigma? See, I think that stigma has, maybe it's just decreased since I was a kid.
It has. I mean,
it just seems like it's not as bad. The stigma isn't as bad now as it was when I was growing up.
I think it's more, Lance, it has to do with, like, I'm thinking about, this situation where you're in, because this is a very real thing that young people, again, not as much as they used to, but some do still face this, where you might be in a situation where you're conflicted about your sexuality, right? And that could be a lot of things. That could be you think you might be gay, or you don't know, or you think you might be a female, if you have male body parts. And so it could be a lot of different things, but you're conflicted about that. And you're not sure how your parents feel, but you think you need help. So now you're in a situation where it's, well, I don't really feel like I can ask for help, because then I'd have to explain why I need help. And then that would open up something that I'm not prepared yet to talk about. So now I turn to the only place that I can find help, which is an online environment where I can hear about other people's experience and find comfort in that and find guidance in that.
And maybe they don't know where to turn, because if they don't feel like they can approach an adult in their life, if they can't approach a parent or a teacher or a guidance counselor, then they reach out. And you would hope, that's the hope, right? I know that as a educator, I've helped many, many students, and my only desire, and I even told my wife and I both told our own children that you've seen us help other children, but we understand that you may not be able to come to us. So we really hope that if you need to, there are other teachers that you can reach out to, because you see us as your parent, not as a teacher. You know what I'm saying? So for those people that are out there, I would just, not that this is a self-help line, but man, try to find an adult that you trust. And explain to me why I'm wrong. I'm really leery of just going out there on social media to look for help. You
do want to be smart about it, because, we do know that there are situations where people reach out and it cannot be good. But I think usually you can trust your judgment on that. And there's a lot of free resources out there too. People forget about that. There's all these great, professionally staffed groups that don't cost any money to reach out to. So even if you don't feel like there's an immediate adult in your life that you can go talk to in person, there are plenty of places you can call, you can text. you can chat online with. They're out there. They exist. And a quick search on your phone will reveal, hundreds of results on organizations out there that are well qualified and well prepared to help you with these things if there's not somebody that you can reach out to. But if you want to keep using social media, because I think this is an important thing too, we have to be realistic that asking people to not turn to social media for any of this is probably not something that's actually going to happen. So what do you do if you're going to keep using social media, both Gen Z and parents? There's 3 things here we're going to tell you, and that's all the time we'll have. So number 1 is know who your friends are. And if you're the parent, know who their friends are. This is the setting privacy settings so that not just anybody can look at your account. In other words, you have to approve who has access to your content. The second one is remember to state your intentions if you're the one posting. And if you're a parent, urge your children to state their intentions. Lance and I talk about this all the time. The problem of not understanding people's intentions, and this exists everywhere in the world. Just be real clear about why you're making this post. What are you trying to get from it? Be real upfront and honest about that, and you're less likely to get the wrong type of interactions if you make it clear your purpose for posting this. And the last thing is, as the teen, be a guide, and as the parents, let your teen be the guide. Now, Lance might get antsy about this one, but just to be clear about what it is, it's and this is how Lance, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is how you taught. It's probably part of how you parented too. Lead with a question. In other words, try to open the conversation as opposed to just coming down and saying, well, I know, X, Y, Z, and this is how it is.
Socratic method. There it is. And it's a great way, I think, to not only teach, but to also parent, because as you said, it makes them feel a part of it.
Because a lot of times that backfires anyway, right? If you say don't do this thing because it's bad, then people are more likely to go do that thing.
You might as well just have told them to go ahead and do it and hand them the car keys and the money so that they can go do that thing.
Exactly. So Lance, we're having this conversation today, right? We tried to do our part to be open and honest. And that's a lot of what we were talking about today. And as a network, right, True Chat, the company that produces this show, that's what we're all trying to do, all of our shows.
Of course. I mean, our mission here is to educate people by providing honest, open, and respectful conversations. And one of the ways that you can help us promote that mission is to get your friends to listen. And this is a podcast. And on the podcast side, you can find us at Spotify, Stitcher, or Apple Podcast, and anywhere else fine podcasts are found. And Justin, but it's not just a podcast. How else can they find us?
Well, we're also a syndicated radio show, Lance. So you can always check your local talk radio stations in your area to see if we play. We're typically on the weekends. So Tuesdays and Thursdays, the podcast comes out, but you're also welcome to always check in the weekends with your local talk radio station. And you can find all of that information at thestateofus.org. We've got books, articles, links, ways to reach out. It's all there. Be sure to check it out. For The State of Us on True Chat in Urbana, Ohio, I'm Justin T. Weller.
I'm Lance Jackson.
And a special thanks to our producer, Bradley Butch, for both appearing on the show today and making Lance and I sound like we know what the heck we're talking about. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Be the change. Be sure to check out our website, thestateofus.org, for books, articles, and all the ways to tune in. Thestateofus.org.